Great. I see we're live on YouTube. Are we ready to go? Yeah.
Yes, we're ready to go.
Thanks, Aidan. Excellent. So kia ora, everyone. I will open the Waimairi Fendalton-Waimairi-Harewood Community Board meeting today for Monday, the 11th of April at 4:31 p.m. So I guess quickly some housekeeping. If everyone could have their videos on, that would be fantastic, specifically the community board members and the councillors. If you could keep yourselves on mute, that would be great. But if you do have any questions, please unmute yourself. And when we go through the process of passing any, coming to an item and needing to make a decision on it, I'm going to say all those in favour say aye, and then I will hold for a slightly awkwardly long length of time just to make sure that I capture everyone. And then I will say those against, the same thing. And then at the end, if we pass it, I will say carried. So you're more than welcome to use the raise hand function as well. But if at any point I miss your hand being raised, then please just unmute yourself and let me know. And yeah, bring it to my attention. That's it, Aaron. Well done. Aaron, have you actually got a question?
I was testing.
Oh, well done. You've passed. That's great. Okay. So what I will do is I will kick off firstly with item number 1. So apologies. So we do have one apology for Linda Chen. I'm happy to move it. Is there a seconder? Oh, I saw Sharisha's hand first. Okay. So all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against?
Aye.
No, carried. Great, thank you. Moving on to item number 2, declarations of interest. So are there any declarations within the agenda that we have today? No. Great. Moving on to item number 3, confirmation of the previous minutes. So I'm happy to move these, but is there a seconder?
Happy to second.
Oh, I heard Mike first. Thank you, Mike. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Nope. Carried. Great. Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, public forum. So we have one item here for public forum. We have Andrew Rasbach. He is a local resident. And Andrew, oh, there you are. Hi, Andrew. How are you?
Good,
So
thank you.
Yeah, good. So Andrew, you've got 5 minutes today for the public forum. Now, we aren't in a position to make any decisions today, and that 5 minutes does include questions.
Sure.
But we are excited to hear what you have to say. So in your own time, please share with us.
Okay, cool. So I'm speaking on, oh, whoops, they tipped over. So I'm speaking on behalf of the Rusbach family. My grandparents purchased a piece of property up in Belfast in 1950. And so we've had it in the family for 72 years. And just recently, we've sold that and it's being developed into housing. So it's been sold to Hamish Wright from CCL Construction. And so Kildare Street running through from Connemara Drive is coming all the way through to Sefton Street. There's about 35 houses going in. It's about halfway up Englefield Road. It's where the Kapatoni stream runs through. And so one of the provisions in the subdivision is that there is a reserve that'll be formed at number 46 Englefield Road, and that includes stormwater retention ponds. So basically, what I was interested in doing was putting forth a naming proposal to have the reserve named after my late grandparents, who were, well, they've owned the land there for 72 years. They owned a civil construction firm. So I did a lot of capital and infrastructure road things around Christchurch. I spoke to Aaron I messaged Aaron about this a couple of weeks ago, and he sort of indicated that council are generally supportive of the idea of supporting history through local place names. There's examples of that in the neighbourhood already. Johns Road, named after one of the local landowners, which was Johns Road Dairy. Tish Place, again named after one. Englefield Road itself, named after Charles Englefield, who owned land at the end of the road. Sefton Street, all of those sorts of ones. So we just thought, the family having owned the property there, we've owned, I think, about 7 properties on that road since 1950. It's an unusual situation to have a family that's done quite a lot in Belfast in that time. And it'll just be a really interesting way to just recognise that history through the naming of a reserve. Now, I'm not sure what the plans are for the reserve in terms of how it all works, but I have spoken to the wider family, and if there were provision, we would also be keen to donate a park bench in there and put a plaque on it. And that's something the family is happy to pay for. So, yeah, that's kind of it in a nutshell. Does anyone have any questions or anything they want to talk to it about?
James, yes, I see your hand.
Yeah, thanks for that, Andrew. Just to clarify, what road there, or what number road in particular was it? Did you think
so it's number 46 Singlefield Road. Yes. So it's currently a 5-acre block.
Yes.
Okay. And so that's being carved up into housing. Like I say, it was all horticultural and agriculture out there in the day. It's the last piece of land left in that area. And yeah, we just thought it was kind of a neat idea to memorialise my grandparents by naming the reserve after them.
Oh, cool. Okay, so to clarify that, it's the reserve that you would like named after them, and not one of the lanes or roads there.
No, I think the family may have put the idea forward to the developer. I don't know where that's gone, but certainly, in the meantime, well, before I even knew about that, I'd approached Aaron just in terms of naming the reserve. And that's something the family were probably a lot happier with.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Thank you, James. Aaron, I see your hand was up.
Yeah, I thank you, Andrew, for the deputation. Always helps when you have the conversation with the whole board rather than one person, so it's great to have you here. I actually like the ring to it. Rustbatch Reserve works really well, rolls off the tongue, and having history in our area, and there's a ton of it through all of Northwood and things as well, which just obviously just along the road. It's really good. And then the same up in the new subdivision by the Groins. A lot of the streets there are named, you'll notice quite a bit of Chinese naming in there because of the connection with Riwi Ali and things like that. So it's good. There's certainly a history of it, so thanks for coming in.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions? No. So I do have one question, Andrew. So
sure.
with you being here today, is it also, are you wanting clarity on the process for what the next steps would look like with that?
Yeah, I mean, if you could quickly just run through. I mean, I understand. I had a quick look online and sort of identified that it goes through you guys, and then you put forth a recommendation to council. Is that correct?
That is something I would have to ask staff, and I believe we have Aidan or Marianne with us. You can't see them at the moment, but they're behind the scenes. What we can do as well is, if that is something that you're interested in, then we can bring this up at elected members information exchange and see if maybe in there we can work out what are some steps to keep you in the loop, so you know what that next phase looks like. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, like I say, the family are quite excited about the idea if we were to get it through, and are quite excited about the idea of, donating a park bench to put in there. But like I say, I don't really know what they're doing with the reserve, if it's just stormwater retention or if there's provision for actually being able to get in there. Right, yeah, and that's information that we might be able to see if we can find out for you as well. Yeah. Okay, well, excellent. Well, you've come to your 5 minutes. Well done, nicely wrapped up. Thank you so much, Andrew, for your time, and great presentation. So we'll probably be in touch. So you're welcome to stay until the end of the meeting. Otherwise, I'm sure one of our staff members will get in touch with you with the details. Great. Hey, I think thanks for that, Bridget, and thanks for that, everyone else as well. Cheers. Great. Thank you. Excellent. So we have no other public forum. So what I will do is move on to item number 5. So deputations by appointment, which we don't have any. And then item number 6, presentation of petitions. We don't have any of those either. So that takes us to item number 7, correspondence, and we do have 3 items of correspondence. Aidan, is this something you'll take us through, or would you like me to go through it?
I can quickly walk through it. So the letter from Countdown Northwards about the upcoming closure of the store in Northwood, because Countdown Belfast is progressing well and will be opening soon, so they'll be moving there. Countdown did offer for the board to come and have a tour through the new Belfast store if you're interested in that, once it's a bit further along. It's quite well progressed already. And probably the other one I can give an update on is the letter from the Northwood Residents Association, because that also went to the Papanuianis Community Board. So their governance team's kind of already followed up on it for us. But the answer is that there's actually already a cycle connection down Redcliffe Road being planned. So that's quite nice and easy, although it is a few years into the future. I can't remember exactly where it is in the LTP. I think it might be about 26 possibly. But yeah, so that one's effectively been taken care of already. And then the third one is Sarah Pellett's letter about the Cobham footpath.
Great, well, thank you. I'll put if there are any questions or comments before I make a motion to. Any questions?
Probably just around that letter from Sarah Pellett, it was a wee bit disappointing to kind of, I guess, read about the fact that somehow this was our problem, when in fact the very clear commitment at the beginning was that she would be taking this on board. So for it to be kicked back to council when we wrote to the minister and she backed that and actually made that commitment to get the funding was a wee bit annoying. But apart from that, happy with the rest of the correspondence.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, that is noted. Any other questions or comments? No, so I will ask for a mover for the correspondence. Oh, I saw Sam, and then a seconder. Shreesh to second. Thank you. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Any against? No, carried. Great, thank you. So moving on to item number 8, proposed road names. So this is 215 Sticksmill Road and 285 Highstead Road. I believe we have Paul Lowe here to speak to this item. Paul, are you present? Oh, there you are. Hi, Paul, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good evening. Look, I'll keep this relatively short unless there's a few questions, but the road names for the board this evening for a subdivision on Sticksmill Road, and the key themes tie into the history of the site and some of the natural and physical properties of the site and locality. So there's 5 names. Do you have any questions?
Aaron, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, only the one, thanks, Paul. And that was just around the Collie Road one, and it's named after the creek or whatever. That didn't seem super strong unless the creek itself has a strong history. That was the only one. All the others made sense.
Yeah, look, it's not uncommon for roads to be named after adjoining waterways. They do tend to become a natural feature of the subdivision. So it's something that's not uncommon, but I'm not sure of the history of Colley's Road, in terms of the reason why the drain was called that to begin with. Right, okay. Yeah, I couldn't find anything. Nothing's coming up. There's a Collie Creek in Wellington, but the Collies this just doesn't seem to be a history. So I just wondered if there's anything, but if there's not, there's not. There are alternative names on the list available as well. Yeah, and I did think the quail one was quite good, given that it's an extinct bird from the area. I thought that looked quite good, but I don't know how anyone feels about that. It was the only question I had on the whole thing was you might potentially go Quail Road instead of Colley's Road. That's it.
Great, thanks, Aaron. Are there any other questions for Paul? No? Okay. Well, what we could do, so maybe I'll put it to the board if we would like to move the staff recommendation. But then I'm also conscious, Aaron, that you are quite interested in Quail Road as an option for Road 1. So,
yeah.
Aidan, what would be the best way to do this? Would it be to
well, on these, you just swap them around. I thought by the alternatives are there, but I'd just like to get the rest of the board's view. So if they were happy with Colley's Road or whether they would prefer the Quail.
My personal view is it's pretty belts and braces. It goes through a pretty robust system. I think it's got to be quite a high bar in my mind anyway to sort of start messing with those. So, you've got a developer and the contract. Everyone's basically on board, including our staff. So my preference is just to say
staff.
About. Okay. So, but if you feel really strongly for it, I'm not going to stop your democratic right, Aaron. But I'm happy to move the staff recommendation for what it's worth.
Happy to second.
All right.
Yeah, and so happy to go along with it. It's just a case of I just raised it. I like strong names. I like names to mean something in an area, and and maybe there is a strong one for the creek. I just can't find it. That's all.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, Aaron.
Cool.
So, okay, well, we had a mover, so that was James to move, and then Mike to second. So I will put it to everyone. All those in favour say aye.
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 Any against? No? Carried. Great. Excellent. Hey, thank you so much, Paul, for
Cheers.
Item number 8. Really appreciate that, and appreciate the staff's work on finding the names. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, moving on to item number 9. This is Todd Ave, and I believe we have Sally Ann present to take us through the report. Hi there, Sally. Sally Ann, how are you? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, just realised. How are you doing?
Old chestnut. So yeah, please feel free to take us through a summary of the report if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. So this is a request that came through the board. Someone, a resident on Todd Avenue, brought to our attention that the visibility when turning out wasn't great, especially with cars being parked on the corner. There's a few businesses. There's a small business open around there, and there's a funeral parlour just open as well. So looking at the required visibility limits, we're just suggesting or proposing to put the no stopping restriction around that corner as shown on the plan. It's quite a simple one, I guess. Any questions?
Happy to move.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to second. But I just wanted to say, firstly, a huge thank you for your for the staff's work on this. And this was a request that came through from, as you said, it came indirectly from a resident, and they're going to be really excited to see that that staff have
good. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry it took a while. Just we've had a few staff move, a bit of a staff move around, so it just missed the approval process a couple of times. So, but yeah, we've done it now, and I'm glad you're happy with it. So
yeah, and it's a great example of residents, because sometimes they are the eyes and ears of the community because they live in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so when they pick up an issue because they live in the area, they experience it, then they can come to the board and we can help move things along with them. So really appreciate that, Sally Ann.
Yeah, that's all right. That's what we're here for.
Excellent. All right. So we had Aaron to move. I second. All those in favour say aye.
Aye. Any
against? No? Carried. Great. Thank you so much. So item number 10, Sally Ann, this is also you. This is Hawkesbury Avenue.
Okay, yep. So straight
yeah. Would you like to take us through this one as well?
Yeah, sure. Oh, it is as well. So this was a request we got through from the St Albans Catholic School that's there. Quite recently, there was a few improvements to the road done on their frontage where a cycleway has been put in, and it had quite an effect on parents not being able to park right there, and they were concerned about children crossing the cycleway. So yeah, after chatting to the principal, we're proposing to put some parking round the back, as shown on the plan, and also put some the no stopping restriction, because the visibility is not too great pulling out of that intersection there. So yeah, she's quite keen to get this in actually. So yeah, if anyone's got any questions on this one, happy to take them.
Any questions from the board? No.
Oh, we're still.
Oh, Mike, you're leaning in. You got a question?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, I'm a frequent visit in that area, mainly to the coffee shops in that area, but I've noticed that problem as well. So
yeah,
I think it's a good idea. Well done, Sally-Ann.
No worries. I'm glad you think it's a good idea. Cool.
Excellent. So can we have a move? So that was James to move and a seconder. Oh, Mike. Okay, Mike to second. All right. So James to move, Mike to second. All those in favour say aye.
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 Any against? No, carried. Great. Thank you so much. And Sally-Ann, also just want to say a huge thank you for all the work you've done to date with the Fendalton-Waimairi-Harewood Community Board. It's been a pleasure to work with you and to get to know you. So yeah, we really appreciate the time you've given to our board. Thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. It's been good. I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so we will move on to item number 11. So this is the discretionary response fund, and we have Mary-Ann, I believe. Are you presenting on this?
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
So this is a fairly straightforward request from the golf club. They're looking for a contribution towards building some new better storage facilities out at the golf club on McLean's Island Road. The current storage is in old shipping containers. They keep getting broken into, they're not very secure, and the floors are pretty rotten and causing quite a bit of a health and safety hazard, particularly for older players who are going to get equipment out of there. So Lisa worked with them and has put forward the recommendation in front of you.
Happy to move.
Okay, so that was Mike to move, Sharish to second. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? No, carried. Great. Thank you, Mary-Ann. And
thank you.
And you've also got us for item 12 as well for the community board area report.
Yes, I think I'll just take the report as read. Just to highlight, the community service awards are going well. They close in a couple of days' time, but we've got 11 nominations in so far. So that's a bit up on what we had last time, but that's pretty exciting. Some good people in the community nominated. And really, I think just highlighting the memos that the board have received, and as you'll see from the Zoom screen, we have quite a few staff here today to speak to those. So any questions about the main body of the report, I'm happy to take, but it's pretty straightforward.
I don't have any questions. Does any other board members? Can I ask Ada maybe for some guidance? Do we move the report now and speak, and then afterwards speak to the memos, or will we move the report after we've had a discussion on the memos?
I think probably do it at the end after your discussion about the memos.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so yeah, as you said, Mary-Ann, we do have staff present. So I will ask ask those staff that are present if they have the ability to turn on their cameras. That would be great. So what would be helpful is if you'd like to take us through the memos, and maybe if you'd like to give us a summary of your findings, just obviously with background, this was a request that the board put to staff to find out more around the possibility to review the Mirabelle car parking plan and just the issues that we're facing, and also residents are facing with with the traffic, the safety concerns and car parking of the area. So what I'm thinking is we'll go through with a summary, maybe if staff want to take us through that, and then we'll have questions from the board. Yeah.
I'll just, sorry, Mark. We're just going to do a quick presentation to the board and then take questions afterwards. So we've got Mark Stevenson here, who's going to start off, and also Michael Thompson and Katie Smith. So over to you, Mark.
Great, thank you. It's Mark Stevenson here. I'm Manager of Planning. Can I share my screen to present? I don't appear to be able to at the moment. It's disabled.
I think if I make you a co-host, it should be okay.
Great.
I'll give that a go. Okay, see if you can do it now.
That's great. Thank you. Just bear with me a minute. Can you see that all right?
Yep.
Great. I'll start off with the slides, and then I'll hand over to Katie Smith and Mike Thompson to talk from their perspectives. As a starter and as context, there was a national direction given in 2020 for councils to remove car parking requirements, and that's in italics on the right-hand side of the slide. And that applies across all councils that across New Zealand. So Christchurch is not immune to that. As a consequence, in February of this year, we removed those the minimum car parking rules that applied, and as a consequence, the framework of what we can control is more limited. Those matters we can still manage under the district plan are mobility parking, or accessible car parks, as referred to in the NPS. We can also control, and we prescribe standards for the dimensions and size of car parking. And we can consider the effects of the location and design of car parking on functioning of the street. So we do control where the location of access to a site is, and how vehicles will maneuver from the car park onto the street. And we do have a rule in the plan that precludes cars reversing onto the street. So in effect, there has to be sufficient space on the site for manoeuvring to enable the vehicle to enter the road space in a forward gear. So we do still control some aspects, but it was made clear in the government's direction that we had to remove those. Having said that, the government has indicated in the same national policy statement that councils are strongly encouraged to manage the effects associated with car parking, and can do so through what it refers to as parking management plans. But I'm going to hand over to Katie and Mike just to talk through some of the issues and some of the methods that can be applied, both in the Maryvale context, but also wider. So over to you, Katie.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, this is fairly new to me. I've just come over to the transport operations team from the Road Amenity and Asset Protection team, but I've discussed this with both Stephen Wright and Mike Thompson today. So if we take the issues around Maryvale and Rugby Street, we've looked through all those, and I've read the report. So what I think our next step here is that we need to take a detailed qualitative parking survey in Rugby Street and surrounds to actually identify the issues that some have been raised by the local residents, and the detail of that will actually work out in those parking spaces, whether they're resident cars, commuter cars, what type of vehicle turnover we're getting, how long, what the duration of the parking is, and when the peak demand is there. So in this particular instance, when we've collected that data and confirmed what the real issues are, we'll be able to inform some solutions and come back to you on the community board. Now, sort of like citywide, we've got the suburban parking policy, which clearly sets out, when parking levels get to a certain level, then what interventions we can undertake, and then if those interventions, such as timed parking, then it gets to 75% of those spaces being occupied, what's the next step we look at, and then the next step. So that's generally what we will be looking at with regards to parking in the suburban areas. That's all I've got at the moment, unless there are any questions.
Yeah, I've got one, Bridget, if it's okay.
Yes, of course, James. Sorry, I can't see you in this mode, but yeah, go ahead.
No. I piped up. Sometimes there's only a couple of faces each on us. Thank you. That was really helpful. I think we will obviously want to get a good outcome with this. My question is probably a silly one, so I apologise in advance. But why collecting the data via the survey of parking? What would be the downside then to just simply appreciating the Maryvale parking plan that we did many years ago? I think in my early time on the community board, it might be time we just do a refresh. And I guess what is the difference with just simply not jumping to that? Would to phrase it another way, doing a refresh of the Maryvale parking plan, which it's probably timely for anyway, would that not achieve the same results? And would we not be able to collect that data anyway as part and parcel of going through that exercise? So I guess I'm just saying, why don't we cut out the middleman and jump to doing what probably we'll have to do anyway, and there's probably no downside in doing it, given that it'll probably provide us the same data which you're needing.
I believe that the Maryvale parking policy or plan was done before we had the suburban parking policy. So it was done sort of in an isolated way, whereas the current suburban parking policy deals with the whole of the suburban area, and therefore it's about consistency as well. So we'll actually, if we go forward, it's actually about treating Maryvale the same as any other suburban areas and vice versa. So really, this appears to be very much an isolated concern around Rugby Street because it's very close to the commercial centre. So we can look at that, and it would be much quicker to do it this way than it would be to do the whole parking plan. But I don't think having spoken to Stephen Wright, it's not really appropriate to go down that now that we have the suburban parking policy.
The reason why I say that, so I totally appreciate what you've said there. The only issue I've got with it is I disagree on one aspect, and that's that I've probably never had so many pieces of correspondence in recent times from so many streets around that area, going as far up as Heaton, and that may be due to the hospital and school, Leinster Road, just due to some intensification and stuff that's happened around there, Maryvale Lane, Tunbridge, Winchester Street, and Andover Street. All of those have been ones where I've had a lot of correspondence. So I guess why I'm saying that is I don't think that it is isolated to Rugby Street, and that's I don't want to, I guess spend then too much time when there's a bigger issue. And we might be a better place just to go, let's just jump into it and sort it out once and for all and do it properly. We all want the same thing, but
yeah. Well, we do. Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't aware of the correspondence that you had on this matter. So I'm fairly new in this position. However, if you could give us more information on that, then that would help us with regards to what investigations we do. We are aware of the recent changes within the area, which is intensification around St George's Hospital, the permission for expansion to the Maryvale Mall, all of those issues which do create more parking in the area. So yes, we can certainly look wider than Rugby Street.
Other board members might be able to comment more fully than me, but my take on it is that we've been dealing with it in a really sort of ad hoc way, where we've got an issue that's sort of bubbling in Tunbridge or around Tunbridge Mews. There we've been fielding sort of concerns and getting work done by community board with Andover Street and Winchester Street, and it's all just coming. It's so piecemeal that I almost wonder if there is a capture all there. And my only fear with what your suggested approach is, which I think is a good one, but I just don't want them to find that we're going to have to then do the same thing for these other streets and wonder if we might not have just said, well, let's just bundle them together so we can take a really holistic approach on this this problem.
Okay, so what I'll probably say at this point in time, I need to go back to Stephen Wright as Transport Operations Manager now, is that we can expand the area to look at for the parking survey, but I don't think we'll be calling it the Merivale Parking Plan. It will be more done under the suburban parking policy.
No, that's fine. I'm really happy to work in with what's best. I guess I'm saying this because I don't want to be creating more work, unnecessary work for both you and me. So the board, I just think are going to be making a rod for our back if we single out one, when what's really clear is that there's a number of these different streets. And the one thing I do know about it is, I don't know what the solution is, but I know that the problem isn't due to one factor. So I think probably around Andover and Winchester, it's around St Margaret's. I think probably further north, it's around the hospital and the mall. And then there's, intensification issues for some of those other streets, such as Rugby Street. So whatever way you think would be most sensible, I'm fine with. But I think my preference would be to expand it to probably that Merivale. I think we did it at a board meeting earlier. We talked of Russell Street to the west, through to Papanui Road to the east, up to Heaton at the north, and Carlton Mill at the south, if that makes sense. Would it be possible to expand that? And perhaps if we do the survey then under the suburban parking plan or scheme or policy, if that would be a way forward, and then we could get some really meaningful data for that whole area, and not just keep revisiting different things in isolation.
Okay, I understand that. Can I come back to you on that?
Yeah,
is that possible? Yeah.
No, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, James. David, you've got a question. I see your hands up.
Yep, thanks. Look, just one other wee question, just to highlight exactly what James has been talking about. And it concerns me when we talk about, it's just one of the suburbs, but and without it sort of sounding wrong, within that sort of those four streets that James mentioned, you've also got a number of secondary schools and intermediates that attract a huge volume of traffic from across the city on a daily basis. So if we're doing any sort of surveys or any traffic vehicle counts, that really needs to be done during term time and not during a school holiday. And I think that's a very unique set of circumstances that's probably only felt by other schools, maybe like Villa or St Bede's, where you have a catchment from across the city. And I really just do hope that we address that as one of the other concerns or factors that have a significant impact in this.
Okay, noted about school times for the survey. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, David. And I mean, what I would just like to echo what James and David have both said. And the other, obviously, housing intensification, that's been a massive factor for the area. It's, you've got narrow roads that haven't been set up, with the housing intensification of this kind, right? And that's not just to one area, that's not just to Rugby Street, that's to a whole lot of roads around that Merivale area as well. And the other thing as well, which is probably why it'd be good to, as James said, do this all together, is there's a few moving parts to this, which is why doing this in isolation ends up being a bit of a patchwork, when actually it would make more sense to do this, to do it once and to do it well, is because we're also looking at, is it the school safety speed zone, or is it's the safe, it's like a that program is happening as well, and that's been and there's been streets within Merivale that have been identified as those streets too. So there's just a lot of moving parts, which is why, doing something that actually looks at it all together would make a lot of sense. I have a question though around, and actually it might be worthwhile, Katie, actually you might have to get more information on this, but I definitely agree that getting a survey and to understand what are the issues that residents are facing, because they are the ones that are experiencing the problems, they're the ones living there, and obviously we are too, but they're the ones that are there day to day, seeing the issues, witnessing the traffic when it affects them, as David has said, through school time. Would you imagine doing multiple surveys for different streets, or is that something that maybe information you'd have to come back to us once you've got an idea about what would be the best way forward?
I think I'll have to come back to you with what's the best way forward and how we're going to tackle that, because as I say, originally we were looking at this as an issue that was brought up as part of this report that came to you, the memo that came to you about Rugby Street. So that was the conversations I had regarding that. Now this is expanded to the wider area. We'd have to come back to you with how we'd undertake that survey. Yeah,
Okay,
and we do understand that there are competing issues in this area, and there's, as you say, quite a few significant changes since the Merivale parking plan was done, such as I say, the mall and the hospital expansion.
Yeah, a lot has changed, so it really is on the mind of residents, right? Because some of those changes haven't even happened yet. So yeah, it's doing it well would be ideal.
So we'll come back with more detail.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. Thank you so much. Any other questions, or will other staff speak to the memos?
Sorry.
Sorry, Mike. I'll just say one other thing before I hand over to Mike. You've made a valid point about looking at all of the parts together, and staff are currently developing what's called the Otatahi Christchurch plan. It's a spatial plan that's looking with a city lens and seeks to bring together existing plans and strategies across council, and which traverses natural, cultural values and as well as the built environment. And we are for that Otatahi Christchurch plan hasn't yet been shared with the public, and we've got a briefing coming up in the coming months with council, but we'll certainly share a similar briefing with the boards. The reason for mentioning that is a possible action arising from that plan in the way of implementation is that we develop neighbourhood plans, and neighbourhood plans would be at a finer grain scale and look at individual areas and seek to take a more holistic approach to managing multiple issues, particularly in the street environment where you've got competing uses. And we've heard a lot about people wanting street trees and also wanting car parking. So through that neighbourhood planning, we could consider how those different values are recognised at a more finer grain, but there's still some work to be done in that space, and I'll come back to you separately at a future date on that.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. And I guess another reason why this is bigger, right? And another plan on another plan, which just makes things just I guess it's good to know that it's wider than just one street as well, but good to know about the plan. So we'll get a briefing on that, you said, around what that neighbourhood.
Yeah, we've got still got some work to be done, but we'll come to you at a future date. I can't commit to when that will be yet, but we haven't got a council date locked in either. So we'll report back to the board at a future time when we've got it in a state that we can share more detail.
Yeah, great. That's really timely, because this is a priority for our board, getting the issues fixed around the Merivale area. So if that can be fitted in with the neighbourhood plan that you've spoken about within the Otatahi plan, then that is something that would really align, because it is important for our board. All right. Okay, Mark, you're going to throw to someone else, I think.
Yeah, Mike, you were going to say.
Oh, yes. Look, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Look, I was involved in the original Merivale parking plan. It was started in 2008 and we finished it off in 2009. And one of the key messages we relayed to the board at the time was that the demand for parking in the Merivale area far exceeded the supply. There was no actual solution, no magical fix to say, look, here we can solve the problem with parking. And as you well know, with intensification, et cetera, it's just that problem, that demand has increased more so. I just want to make a point that there may be measures that we can do with parking management, and we have to be mindful that will we solve the parking problem, or will we just really relocate it to other streets? So I just wanted to highlight that. Another from the point I'd like to make from the operational point of view is that a resident of Rugby Street is very concerned about what he claims is the road is too narrow for parking on both sides. The road is 9.3 metres curb to curb. We did an analysis. We have just under 850 roads of similar width to this in Christchurch City. And in fact, talking to colleagues who've worked in other places, many other cities have roads of similar width with parking on both sides. I'm not saying every single road is full up with parking, but the 9 metres from our cross section is something that is our design for local urban roads. And if we have them wider, make them wider by, let's say, removing parking, we probably won't be widening the physical roadway, but if we were to remove parking, we know that that increases vehicle operating speeds down a road. And while it is tight, no one's trying to deny that, it is a tight space, but it tends to keep the speeds lower. So when people say it is an unsafe width, it actually, when you put it on balance, it keeps speeds low. And I just thought I'd like to mention that, in comparison to some older suburban streets in Christchurch that are very wide, we do get lots of complaints about excessive speed. So, we've also got to look at those aspects as well of not solving one problem, but perhaps creating another at the same time.
Yeah, thanks for that, Michael. And once again, coming back to that point that we need to look at this, as a wider plan to make sure that we aren't going to be fixing one street at the expense of making issues in another, but also in saying that they're, very keen for, staff to be looking at ways to be looking, basically turning over every stone, because this is an issue that residents are facing. So appreciate that it is, some of the solutions might be difficult, but it's a real concern for residents. And it's a growing concern, right? Because if there were issues that were back in 2008 and now those same issues are just increasing, right, then it just highlights the point that something does have to be done. But no, you raise valid points though, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, mate.
Could I just add to that, as part of any wider study, is that we're required to consult with all residents. And Councillor Goff, you may recall, we had some quite varying opinions back in 2008, 2009. Some streets didn't want any parking restrictions, for example. So this will be part of the whole study if we have to look at the wider area. And the last census showed 1,050 residential units in what we define as the Mirrorvale area. And I'm sure since the last census, that's actually grown quite a bit. So, we're going to have a lot of people with a lot of different views. So it's quite a challenge with that. But however, we're up to the task on that.
Through you, Madam Chair, if I can just quickly say something to Mike with that. I totally agree with you. And that was kind of the reason that I was piped up around making that area a bit wider, because the one thing I remember with this is someone will say that something is black on one street and the other person will say that something is white, and finding grey or something actually isn't really the answer. So I didn't want us to look at one street in isolation and say, well, here's a clear-cut solution for it, because it probably won't be. And the only way we will come up with a solution, and it won't please everyone, but a way to make things better anyway, will be to look at it holistically and try and find something that sort of talks to the area as a whole and takes into account all of the pressing and competing issues, like the 5 schools in the area and mall and hospital and everything like that. So totally agree with what you're saying. And I do remember the challenges from way back then.
Yeah, thanks, James. David, I see your hand.
Yep. Is the objective of the car parking plan to increase the amount of space on the road, or are they a finite number? Or is it about rationing those spaces against a greater volume of people?
Was this in regard to the current plan? The
original? I would like to think that the objective is trying to find how we can increase the volume of car parking or linear meters around streets that can actually be used for car parking spaces, as opposed to the alternative in rationing them.
Yeah, well, from my perspective, there's only a finite amount of length of curbside to park on legally. Short of creating angle parking, there's no way to increase those numbers. And from my just thinking of most of the streets in Maryvale won't be conducive to angle parking on them because of their width. All I can say is from the original plan, as I said, we could never meet the demand for parking. We just chose with the first one to create a balance between some longer term unrestricted parking on one side of the road and time restricted on the other side, to allow an opportunity for residents and their visitors to get some opportunity to park on the curbside, because it was freed up from all day parking. So that we will keep that in mind now with a review of what we do now is, do we want to continue with that, or what can we actually do to improve the situation? And we also have to say who has a priority here. Is it the residents have priority over parking, or do people who actually work in the area have any right to park on a street nearby? So those are things that we're going to have to look at fairly carefully as well.
Yep. So no, because I'm sort of thinking, Repton Street, for example, that's very wide with whilst it does have a relatively high volume of houses down it, that might be conducive to actually doing angle parking, and changing some of the gutters into a more or the old-fashioned gutters with a dish through to the old or the new type versions, whatever they're called, where we can actually have cars increase the volume of the number of spaces with some clever thinking. So I would encourage the plan to explore every option, not just about rationing.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, David. Any other questions for Michael? No? Okay. All right, Michael, were you going to throw to another staff member, or
I've probably finished. Katie, are you okay now, or John, or Mark?
I've got some general slides now about intensification, but that's moving away from the core purpose of what this briefing was on around the memos. So I've got nothing to add in terms of the memos, unless there's any questions.
No, I feel I think we've all kind of gone through the questions that we have. It's just more comments just around, this is kind of coming back to what we said with Katie, is just we would really like this to be explored through other streets as a wider issue. And then what David was just saying is to look at every option and appreciate that while this is going to be difficult to do, it doesn't mean that it's not worth doing, because our residents are really struggling, and there's a lot of moving parts, and we appreciate that. But Mark, if you want to take us through your final slides, you're welcome to.
Yeah, I'll just give a very brief overview of what's proposed in the way a plan change to the district plan around intensification, which obviously in itself will give rise to increased demand. Just bear with me a minute. I'll share my screen again. Right, so today we started consultation on draft changes to the district plan which implement the government's direction for intensification. it made headlines in December. The government's released new legislation which enables up to three stories across most residential zones of the city, and up to 3 houses per section without requiring resource consent. That legislation in itself didn't amend the district plan. We're now consulting on the draft changes to the district plan, and we'll notify those for public submissions before the 20th of August. And in terms of it's worth saying that we have to implement those requirements around 3 houses per section, except where we can justify an area being exempt, and examples of where we've applied exemptions are where there's hazards or heritage values or another constraint that precludes that level of density. It is worth also acknowledging that there are matters that the public can influence and other aspects that they cannot. So the 3 houses per section and standards that come with that around the setback from the boundary, the height limit, the controls on shading and so forth are not up for grabs. And so the scope of what the public can have a say on is more constrained than what it would normally be. And what the public can have a say on is more about changes that go above and beyond 3 stories. So around our central city and commercial centres, we're proposing to enable even greater heights than that for commercial and residential development, and that's where the public can have the greatest influence. So questions on the right of this slide are we enabling development to go high enough? Have we enabled additional height in the right places? In terms of the extent of intensification, where we've gone above 3 stories, that generally extends from within a walkable catchment of a commercial centre like Maryvale. And so the question really for the public is, has that area been drawn too large or too small? And are the boundaries in the right places? There's also comments we're asking the public about whether there's other areas that should be restricted from higher densities because of character or heritage value. And we've gone through work to identify those, as well as reflecting what's already in the district plan. And just as a summary, across the majority of residential zones, we're rezoning that to call it medium density residential zone, and so that will be 3 stories enabled. And these controls here, there's no influence that the public can have. Where there is a greater influence is around the city centre and larger centres that I described. And in that regard, there's up to 4 stories is enabled without consent, but people can apply for consent to go much higher than that. And to give some sense of how high buildings could be in the high density residential zone, we're proposing to enable up to 10 stories north of Victoria Street around either side of Papanui Road and extending down Carlton Mill Road. As I was outlining, above 4 stories would require resource consent, which enables us to assess the effects of that additional height. Within even our smaller centres, we have to enable 3 stories at least in accordance with the government's direction. But around our larger centres, we're proposing to enable at least 4 stories and up to 6 stories around our largest commercial centres. So around Riccarton, Hornby and Papanui commercial areas, we're proposing to enable 6 stories of development, and that will be within prescribed distances of those centres. So we have to allow intensification to a distance from the commercial zone, and that varies according to the centre. So that's, as I indicated was just a very brief snapshot, but there's a lot more information that you can find on the council website. You'll see just on the cover on our homepage on the council website, there's this icon, the Enabling Housing Choice logo, and there's more information the public can access there. And there's a map which enables people to search their property to understand what zone they're proposed to be within. And there's more information there about how much people can potentially build up to. But it's worth emphasising we're at a draft stage, so it's still very much a working document. And after the 4 weeks of consultation, which ends the 13th of May, we'll be making further changes in response to feedback. So that's just a very short and sweet overview.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Sorry, and I appreciate how that links into obviously the issues that we're facing with within Mirabel and the parking plan. So, any questions for Mark? No? Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you, Mark. Thank you for taking us through that. Any other comments for your memos that you've given us? No. Okay. So I'm quite keen to know in terms of next steps, because obviously this is an issue that residents are experiencing right now. What would that look like? And I guess that's us asking staff here today. Would it be, obviously, Katie, you mentioned that you'd need to get more information and work out what does, looking at reviewing the parking plan or whatever we end up calling it in detail looks like. I'm just quite keen to get some guidance, and so we're clear on maybe when the next check-in will be for us all.
As I say, I don't have that today. What I'd probably be best is if I can come back to you in the next few weeks with a clear indication of what the next steps will be, and if we can, some form of time frame around that. If I came back in a memo form, would that be suitable?
Yep. Does anyone else have comments on that? Yeah, we're comfortable with a memo format. That's fine. Yeah, appreciate that. This is new information that, well, this is a new position that you're in, and you've got some information that you need to work backwards on. So that's fine.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess with that, Bridget, it's just pick up on James's point earlier. It's we just need to make sure that if we need to have an action from it, we can. So
that's it. Yeah.
I'm just on the phone though. Sorry.
So, Katie, with that in your memo, then I guess it would be, just something to, as what Sam just said, to keep in mind in your memo that we would like the board is keen to know what an action plan is and next steps. Rather than it being, I guess, information that you've come back with, that would be really helpful. And for us, and I'm speaking on behalf of the board here, so David and James, feel free to jump in. But what we would really like to see is some sort of, whether it's a parking plan or whatever we end up calling it, but an intense review and solutions for what can be done in the Mirabel area. And there are specific roads that, I guess you put areas within the area that we're getting our most concerns from residents about. So we can actually come up with a plan to resolve some of these parking issues. And not all of them are parking issues, some of them are safety issues as well. But just keeping in mind that there's a few moving parts to it with the safer speed zones, the neighbourhood plan that Mark was talking about, and the fact that this is also a board priority as well. Yeah.
Okay.
I was just going to say, Bridget, whether it's worth Aidan recording this as an action, so we're all clear what's expected to come back. Is that the intention, Aidan?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. Maybe we could add an extra resolution to the board recommendation here, and we could clear up exactly what the board's looking for.
Yeah, that would be great.
I totally agree with you, Bridget, but our intention here is most certainly not to create work for the sake of work or to tie stuff up. It's quite the opposite. We just want to deal with this, once and for all. It'll never be once and for all, but certainly in the meantime, because it's just becoming such a reoccurring issue, and it's really clear that these issues are different, but all have a lot of stuff in common, though the solutions won't be the same. So just doing a capture rule so we don't keep having to revisit these things, on an ad hoc basis, I think is going to be key to it.
Yeah, agreed. Aidan, for the resolution, would it be helpful for you to share the screen so we can see what's written? Or do you want to, would that be possible?
Yes, I haven't really produced anything yet, but I can share my screen and we can work on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm thinking it would be for what have we got? Yeah, request staff to explore and what would the wording be?
Report back to the board.
Yeah, let's get some suggested wording. Even, I don't know if even Mike or John might want to just give some guidance here, because look, we all understand what each other is saying, and what I don't want to do, and I hate it when sometimes then board members then try and do this and try and be too clever for our own good, when realistically, it's the staff who are going to be at the coalface of this, and we need to make sure that they're empowered to be able to give us, something that will make a tangible difference. So what's going to work for you guys, I guess, is my question. Give us the words that can allow this to be captured. But we just don't want to hamstring you by saying, putting resolutions that don't mean a lot or that, are not achievable.
Yeah, I might leave that to Michael and Katie to answer, because it's going to go back to their team.
It is. So this is
just
off the top.
I don't want you to, you don't have to necessarily do it on the fly. Is there anything else that we could get to? We could even just come back to that.
I suppose what I'm from my earlier conversation with Stephen Wright, I suppose what I can see that we can do that might help in this whole area of parking issues around there is that the staff review the area that you mentioned, which was Heaton to Carlton Mill, Papanui to Rossall, with regards to the suburban parking policy. And I suppose and undertake, because the thing is, we probably wouldn't need to survey every street or every inch of every street, because there are places like if you took Rugby Street, for instance, the issue is down the Papanui end much more than it is down the Rossall Street end.
But that's what the issue is. You're half right. The issue is a different issue. That's what the problem is. So, for example, we've got Rastrick Street. Now, that is not the same issue that keeps, that Bridget and David and I are being bombarded with from the Rastrick Street residents. Is not the same one as the eastern end of Rugby Street, but the other end of Rugby Street, we have issues due to Rangiruru. And for example, and at the probably around the eastern side of Rugby Street is probably more around the mall and perhaps even Selwyn House, or the perceived narrowness of the street. Appreciating what Michael said, and I totally agree. So I think my point is that there are issues in all of these areas. It's just they're not the same issue, which also means that it won't be the same solution. Because just to follow on from what Michael said, or to go back to that, he's 100% right. You'll have some streets that say we're crying out for parking restrictions, and others are saying we're crying out for more parking or to not have it restricted. So I think it's just being able to look at it holistically is going to be what's key to this, because then you can start making some sense of it. But if you come up with a solution for one area, it will just create a problem in the next one. So
as I say, we have to undertake the investigation first to address the
Totally. So what would be wrong with, why don't we just do a mail dump really, or a mail out of the survey then just to every household within that patch, and then see if there's any common denominators or some data that sort of becomes quite apparent?
I think when we were talking about survey, we were looking more at the collection of data, not of the actual vehicles first.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, that was our undertaking of survey. So we would survey the area with the amount of cars, because there's, in the parking policy, there's that 75% occupancy threshold in all different instances. So that's what I think that's where we'd start to try and highlight where those issues are, which is what I was talking about. You know, in one street there are some areas that clearly have high occupancy, and in other areas of the same street there might not be. So I would say that what we
suggest, if you were to look at it from a business lens and say it needs to be efficient and effective, you know, you need to maximise the amount of curbside parking to its maximum use. So the residents, in essence, are complaining there's not enough space on the road. If we look at all the common problems away from the safety issues, it's just there's just not enough parking. So whether it's not enough parking for a resident or a visitor, or that those residents that are there can't necessarily get it outside their house, and then what that's doing is it's jamming a whole lot of cars down certain streets. So we need to look at the solution is trying to find the best outcome where every square inch of a street can be used to its maximum.
The only issue with that, David, I know what you're saying, but I just think that it varies street by street, because if you take Eastern Rugby Street...
Oh yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
You're essentially got a resident saying, without saying it, we have too much parking, because they want some of it to go because they feel that makes the street too narrow. So it'll vary massively from street to street.
Yeah.
So I suppose really what we're saying here is that the first thing is to gather the data as to what levels of parking are within within the streets within that area.
And then we should some luck to try and make sense of it.
Can I ask Katie, because we're also getting concerns, and I'm not saying this to throw a spanner in the works, I'm purely just saying this because it's really helpful that we're all here together so we can all be on the same page going forward. But we're also, it's not just car parking issues and that residents are getting in touch with us. It is safety concerns, it is speeding down streets. So would this plan, or whatever this undertaking looks like, is that going to capture and address those issues as well, not just car parking?
Well, I think as we mentioned earlier, there's a slow street or slow neighbourhood plan that's you mentioned earlier as well. That usually takes traffic counts and speeds. I mean, as you say, these are road corridors. Road corridors, the main function of road corridors are to actually move traffic from one place to another, but with safety and speed in mind. They also have competing sort of demands. Yes, there's parking for people to park there, but also there's amenity. So there's grass, berms and trees, and we know that there's demand for more trees in areas as well. There's the urban forest plan, etc. So there's all these competing uses for a finite area. As Mike said earlier, it's a finite space that we've got, and we need to make the most efficient use of that, but at the same time making sure that the impact of additional parking doesn't have a detrimental impact on the amenity of the area, and then also the speeds within those areas as well. You'll get some who'll say they're too narrow and you can't drive down them, but at the same time, as Mike said, by having them narrower actually reduces the speed. So it's a multiple problem, but at the end of the day, I think what most people want who live in that area is, yes, the mobility for their visitors or for them to park within a reasonable amount of time, but to also have a very nice amenity around where they live as well. and that includes and safety as well. So there's multiple things that we have to look at. I think here the first thing we need to do is look at what the level of parking and possibly speed is in this area, and then we can find out what the problems are. If people are speeding down Winchester, yeah, that's what we'll have to address, and how we address that.
Yeah,
so the first thing we can do is look at gathering the data.
And when you, because obviously you said before, surveying means, you know, seeing how many cars are there. There are going to be some issues on the streets that can't be captured by a car by counting the cars, right? Like they're going to be issues that, you know, that you have to experience rather than just simply count cars to survey the problem. So I'm not going to tell you how you should do your job, but I'm just letting you know that yeah, whatever this plan looks like, I guess it's just making sure that it's done thorough, so all that data can be picked up. So as you said, these are intertwining issues, so it's important that we capture it all as well. Yeah.
So I think as you say, we start off by gathering some information first, before we come up with any solutions.
Okay.
So can I jump in? Is this, Katie, does this look okay to you, or would you prefer to maybe say that you'll report your findings back to the board first and then maybe work on a action plan after that, kind of a two-stage?
Yeah, I think what we need to do is do the data gathering first, and then come back to the board and say what we've found with regards to the issues, and then go from there.
Okay, so if we do that and we make it to a 3, and maybe.
And sorry, Katie, just to be really clear, what do you mean by data gathering? Like, what would that process look like? How long would that take?
I can't actually say today, because I've only been in this position for 2 weeks as far as traffic operations. So I'm going to have to go back to Stephen Wright, who's been, you know, team leader for this area. He stepped into Stefan's role. It's a bit of musical chairs in our area. So I would have to get his advice from that. I'd say previously I was in the road amenity and asset protection team, so I'm just caretaking here at the moment. I would have to get further advice from somebody who has more experience in this. But yes, it could be things like tube counts for speeds. It could be, as I say, the occupancy data of vehicles in certain in the different streets as well. And I don't know how long that's going to take, but what we can do is I can have a conversation and come back to you with more details as to what information we gather, and how we'd gather it, and how long that will take.
Yeah, that'd be really helpful. Thanks, Katie. Okay, so here we have what have we got? I'm just reading the wording now. And Aidan, this will have to be moved in second, won't it?
Yes.
Yeah, and will we have to do it's separate from moving and seconding the area report?
No, that's all right. You can do it all at once.
Okay, cool. All right. So we'll just read this here. So just making sure that everyone is comfortable with the wording that we've got written for part B. That's really hard because I can't see you all. So I'm just going to quickly change to gallery view. All right. Could we perhaps put a date in here as well, or at least some kind of time capture, just so this doesn't, I know it's not going to fall off your radar, Katie, but just so we've got it sort of captured in time, like could we ask that at least at least we know what the next steps are? Like we appreciate that obviously review is going to have to happen, but could the board be kept in touch, say like a week or 2 weeks from now, just so we know what your next steps are, Katie?
Yes, I think we can do that, because as I say, once I've had a chance to talk to Stephen Wright, we can actually set out what we can do and in what time frame that we'll be able to do that. And then that at least then gives the board an idea of how we can progress this.
That last sentence doesn't make much sense, Aidan. But that's right. Look, I guess we can wordsmith it after, but could we add in there, Aidan, just around a timing and at the end just to say, and staff to provide.
You're almost asking for an interim report back or something, aren't you?
Well, yeah, like, I mean, it doesn't have to be
a progress update.
But a progress update, yeah. And it can be casual. It could just be an email, just so we know, what that. Because I appreciate that we're kind of moving something, not quite knowing what it looks like, right? So that would be because obviously Katie needs to get a bit more information and just find out a bit more detail with Steve. You said.
So when would you like to put that date as?
I mean, I would quite like, Katie, what's realistic with you? Like a week from now, would that be possible to get an idea of how big this project would look like?
I think at least 2 weeks, please.
2 weeks?
That would be good. So that would give us
there's a lot of
time
public holidays as well coming up.
Yes, because we've got Easter and Anzac Day, and yeah.
True. Okay.
I appreciate what you're saying, Bridget, but I think the most important thing is here, and staff get this, like what we're really saying is we want a real line of sight over it, because it's a real issue. We want to do it properly, and it's very important to us, and we're just requesting to be kept in the loop and ensure that we have, like I said, a line of sight about how it's tracking, so we can make sure that we're doing everything we can.
Well, it would be better to just say,
Sorry, I was just going to say, Aidan, I think number 3 could probably come out because the next steps will be kind of identified as we go along and get the update on the review. I don't think that probably needs to be there just now.
Yeah, true. I think 3 then is fine. Personally, request staff to provide a progress update on the review. I don't want to make it too onerous. No one's going to, feel that this isn't important to us, and I think everyone understands, the line of sight that we want over it. So I think we're all on the same page. Just keep us in the loop. It's really important.
Yeah. Okay.
So we could do that, or what do you suggest? Provide regular progress updates or something like that?
Yeah, you can provide regular progress updates. This is, sorry, I think we're getting definitely into the detail here. It's just more this particular. It's more around appreciating that Katie needs to chat with Steve and get an idea on what the next steps are. So I guess, but regular progress is fine because we'd expect that anyway. So that would fit into it for now and for the future as well.
Okay.
All right. I wonder, sorry, if we have parking operations, and Katie, might be great to get your guidance on this, but at number 2, it says, oh no, that's true, traffic and parking operations. That's fine. I was going to change that so it can be a bit more holistic, but I think traffic captures the other issues that we're getting from residents as well. Yeah.
Okay. That was my thinking as well.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Aidan. Okay, so I'm happy to move this. Is there a seconder? Wait, sorry, we're going to be moving the whole report. So this is the whole report and also part B as well. So I'm happy to move. And James, I saw your.
Yeah.
Happy to second? Yeah, great, excellent. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? No, carried. Great. Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Mike and Mark and John and Katie for all coming and speaking to the memos today. We appreciate that it took a bit of us to obviously talk through the memos, and we really appreciate the time and the effort. But as you can tell, this issue is bigger than just one street, and it's important that we get it right. And so that took some time to make sure that we could capture that. So really appreciate it all. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
So yeah, all right, moving on to item number 13, elected members information exchange. Is there anyone, any of the board would like?
Just one really quick one, Bridget. Public meeting with Jerry Brownie, Sarah Pellet and me and the Avonlea Community Group on the 26th of April. It'd be just good to note that. 7 p.m. at the St. Mark's Church on Wood Hills Road.
Cool. Thanks, Sam.
Very quick, Madam Chair, could I just flag that the Rata midwives are going to be presenting the petition to the Save St George's Maternity Ward meeting at 10:30 a.m. on Wednesday the 13th of April. So if anyone is interested or feels that their facility is important to that local community, you can have that in your diary. I'm sure they'd love to see you, but it's just something that I thought I would flag, given it's in our ward area.
Yeah, thanks, James. Jason.
Yeah, well, this is more just question for you, James. What was the rationale behind even suggesting that St George's needs to be shut down? Like, we had both of our kids there. It just seems really bizarre when you hear there's massive shortages of midwives and all that kind of stuff that they want to shut down facilities.
Yeah, pass. Probably I'm not the best person to answer that question, but I can talk to you offline about the conversations I've had anyway, though, Jason. Very happy. I share your sentiments, though.
Yeah, so that's.
Okay, there's just an item that I'd like to raise. So there is a resident who lives at 70 Garden Road, and the resident is experiencing issues with flooding that is happening at the back of the property with the Wairapa stream. And so what's been happening is, because of the silt that has been there for a while, it's obviously creating heaps of good nutrients for the weed to be prolific, and that weed is causing massive issues with flooding in the area. So the request that the resident has is for us to see if currently the weed is getting cleared out by council twice a year, but it's just not enough. So I was wondering if we could see whether staff can make the cleaning of the weed to be increased to 3 times a year, if that's possible. And Aidan, I don't know, maybe you might have the answer. Is this, what would be the best way for us to find out if that can happen?
I can just log that as an action, so I'll follow that up for you and get back to you on that. Yep.
Yeah,
so
I understand that. I understand the resident has already made an action, but they haven't heard anything from council. So if we could chase that up, then that would be great. They're apparently, oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, we will recall a resident from that street and from that end of the street, plus the neighbour either side of that particular house, came and spoke to the board 2 years ago and highlighted this as a problem. So it is very, that part of the Avon River is obviously very narrow, and yeah, it is extensively flooding in that area. Yeah. Thanks for that, David. It's true. It's like I can send through pictures to everyone, and the resident was going to come and speak. They'll be the same ones we have on file from 2 years ago, or if not a year ago. Yeah. And I know I from what the resident told me is they increase from getting the weed out once a year to twice a year, but that just hasn't fixed the issue. So we're looking to see whether we can get the cleanup to change to 3 times a year, and also can we explore some long-term actions? So whether that is, I don't know what they are, I'm not an expert in this, but whether it is, dredging the river, or removing the silt, because obviously the silt is giving the weed nutrients, which is causing the weed to grow really prolifically. Why don't we go for a memo on it, perhaps, and then staff can report back about what the issues are or what they think could remedy it, and then we could because it might dredging might not necessarily be the answer. So I don't want. I'm just always uncomfortable jumping to the solution,
But I wonder if they just put a memo or provided a memo for us on it. Obviously, increasing a level of service has a operational costs and stuff to it, but there might be some other factors, or there could be some other solutions potentially. I don't know.
I think it's such a good idea, James. Yeah, because obviously we're not experts, so we shouldn't jump to conclusions. That would be great. Could that be something that we could action, Aidan?
I'll do my best to push that along. Yep. I'll certainly raise that with the team and try to get a memo back to the board.
Okay, that would be great. Yeah, because the flooding's terrible. It's really bad, and I know there might be delays because of COVID, right? Like staff aren't able to come by the river and sweep it, but it's just currently it's not doing any. Yeah, it's not fixing the problem, which is a real shame. All right. Any other elected members' information exchange? No? Okay, well, I will move, I'll close the meeting then at 6:01 p.m. Thanks so much, everyone. And submissions committee people, stay on the line. Everyone else, you can go.
Right. Thanks very much. See you later.
If we can,
councillors, we need to do the garden pride thing with the councillors.
Oh, we do too. That's right. Okay, sorry, councillors.